Namaste and Jai Swaminarayan. Welcome to this week's episode of Timeless Hindu Wisdom. This is a special web series delivered by the Swamis of BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha. It has been initiated to inspire us during these challenging times with the universal wisdom of ancient Hindu scriptures presented in a contemporary, bite-sized format. Tyagprakashdas Swami graduated from Nottingham University in electrical engineering and then completed a PhD in physics at the University of Surrey. He was initiated as a sadhu by Pramukh Swami Maharaj in 1986 and spent 5 years in India studying Sanskrit, Hindu literature and philosophy. Having served in BAPS temples in India and Houston, he currently travels across the UK nourishing spiritual centres through his thought-provoking talks. With his wealth of experience in the sciences, complemented by his knowledge of the Hindu scriptures, he brings a deep and rich outlook in applying Hindu principles in our modern, contemporary lives. Without further ado, I now hand it over to Tyagprakashdas Swami.
Namaste and Jai Swaminarayan. Welcome to this timeless Hindu wisdom series. We as people, we are born and we die. And between these two, there is life. This life, it could be as complex as this, or it could be as simple as this. What it is, it depends on how one is willing to see it. If we learn to see in the right way, let's look at the example of the formula that was put up. The first formula was quite complex, or so it appeared. But if we see the formula in the right way, all that complex formula is saying is 1 + 1 = 2. So seeing something in the right way, though it may appear complex, it can appear very simple. So if we learn to see life in that way, instead of being very complex, it could become very simple. Today we will listen how to see the picture differently by learning to step out. But what is it that we are supposed to step out of? It goes by various names. Maybe a mindset, a viewpoint, perspective, tunnel vision, and so on. Let us look at this picture. It has a small frame. What do we see? We see some hills. We see some water. What happens if we make the frame bigger? Now we see something very different. Something much more pleasurable, enjoying, satisfying. It's the same way in life. Things that come into our life, if we develop the habit of seeing them differently, maybe expanding the frame, like say in this picture example, see the bigger picture, so to speak, or see the picture more clearly, like for example the complex equation. And then we realize that actually what it's saying is very simple and easy. Nyaya Darshan, one of the ancient schools of Hindu philosophy, mentions Kupa Mandukya Nyaya, which is basically the logic of a well frog. Well frog meaning a frog who lives in a well, water well, which is very small, maybe 5 feet diameter or something. So this is a story of a frog which has been living within the walls of a well, unaware of the outside world. Now one day, an ocean frog gets washed off the waves and falls into that well. The well frog inquires to the newcomer, "How big is the ocean where you lived?" The frog replied, "It is huge." The well frog said, "It must be 5 times bigger than this well." The ocean frog said, "No, much bigger than that." The well frog said, "Is it 10 times bigger?" "Much more than that," said the ocean frog. The well frog was now curious and said, 100 times? The ocean frog replied, 100 is nothing. The ocean is much bigger than that. The frog from the well did not believe the ocean frog and said, "You are a liar. How can any place be 100 times bigger than my well?" You see, the well frog had been living in the well its whole life. It had not seen anything beyond the walls of that well. Therefore, its mind could not comprehend the idea of a vast ocean or the world that existed outside of that well. But if the well frog steps out of the well, it would see the big picture. It would realize that there is much more to life than what I previously believed. Steve Maraboli, who is an internet radio commentator, motivational speaker, and author, once said, "Once your mindset changes, everything on the outside will change along with it." Wayne Dyer, who was an American self-help, spiritual author, and motivational speaker, said, "If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." So there are many quotes of this type that we can find, but they all allude to the same thing: change. Change in our mind. Change our mindset, change our attitude, change our perspective, change our viewpoint, and so on. If that changes, then everything changes. Gunatitanand Swami, in his talks, a very spiritually elevated saint who lived in India about 150 years ago, once said that if the entire earth is covered in thorns, wherever we walk, we're going to get injured. So somebody might say the solution is to cover the entire earth with carpet. Now that's not feasible. But Gunatitanand Swami said, instead, if we wear shoes, then the whole world has changed. So in the same way, an individual changes their mindset, their viewpoint, their perspective, makes their frame bigger, then the world will change for them. Their outlook on life will change. Let us look at 2 people who stepped out. These are 2 true stories. One is a person called Colonel George Hall. This is him standing next to his fighter plane. He was caught by the Vietnamese army during the time of the war. And he spent 7.5 years from 1965 to 1973 as a prisoner of war to the North Vietnamese army. Colonel George Hall spent the majority of his time in captivity in solitary confinement. This is how Colonel Hall survived his harrowing experience. It was said that people who spent that much time in a black box, when they came out, they were basically mental cases. They'd flipped. He was a prisoner of war locked in a dark box for 7.5 grueling years. And when he came out, he was perfectly normal. There was nothing wrong with him. So what did he do? He changed his outlook, changed his perspective, made his frame bigger. What was his frame? His frame was a 7-foot by 7-foot cell. Darkness. But he changed his frame size. What he did once, when he was out of his cell, he brought a stick into his cell. And this stick, he would imagine, is a golf club. And he mentions that every day he would play at least 9 holes. He goes on to say, I'd visualize a golf course that I had played and enjoyed, like Pine Valley or Pebble Beach or the Hattiesburg Country Club. I'd hit every shot with that stick, and then I'd walk around that room. For instance, I'd hit my driver and then step off 240 yards or so around the room, because he knew the room was 7 foot, so he would know how many times he would have to go up and down. I'd think about how long the hole was and decide what club to hit next. I not only walked from the tee to the green, but from the green to the next tee. And I talked to people I imagined I was playing with. He used to visualize in his mind these golf courses. You know, he'd imagine the weather, the blue sky, the clouds, the light breeze, the sunshine. He would imagine the noises of the birds. As he mentioned, the people, the friends, he would talk to them. He would look at his golf bag and pick a particular club. He would hit the golf ball. He would walk to the next position as if he was walking on grass. And every day he did this. As he mentioned, he played 9 holes every day. Different golf clubs, with people. He made his frame way bigger. Not just a 7-foot by 7-foot cell, but out in the open on a golf club. 1 week after he was released, 7.5 years later after entering that camp, and he came back to America, he entered the Greater New Orleans Open. And in the first game, he shot a 76. Now this was without any practice on a real golf club. But because he changed his perspective, he changed his outlook on life. Something that could have been very complex and miserable and suffering and so on, he changed it to something very simple. Okay, let's play golf. Let's be out in the open. Let's enjoy the sunshine. Let's talk to people. Let's see the greenery. And he was okay. The other person that I want to talk about is a person called Nicholas James Wojcicki. He's born in Australia he had a rare condition. He was born without arms and legs, basically just the head and this body. Now, what can you do in life? You've got arms up to here, say, and just short legs. But Nicholas changed the way he looked at life. He could have looked at it in a very different way, It's not worth living. What's the point? What am I going to do? Why was I born like this? Doesn't God like me? He didn't have any of those thoughts. In fact, he had tremendous love for God. He's an evangelist, he's a preacher, motivational speaker. Despite being born with this rare condition, what has he achieved in life? He completed a degree with a double major in accounting and financial planning at 21 years of age. He's traveled to more than 60 countries around the world as a motivational speaker. He's established an NGO named Life Without Limbs. He's released a documentary movie, Life's Greater Purpose. He's written a book, Life Without Limits, Inspiration for a Ridiculously Good Life. He was even felicitated with the Australian Young Citizen Award. He starred in a short film called The Butterfly Circus. And for that particular role in this film, he won the Best Actor in Short Film Award. He's also founded his own company. Attitude is altitude. And he is best known for his saying, if God can use a man without arms and legs to be his hands and feet, then he will certainly use any willing heart. What I have just read is a summary of what he's done. We ourselves can find out much more about him from the internet, from YouTube channels. He goes swimming, he does this, he does that. He enjoys life. He's happy. And he makes other people happy. So many tens of thousands of people he's given motivational advice. People who may have felt that, what can you do in life? I can't do much, and so on. And seeing him and his condition and what he's achieved, it's given them inspiration. So these are two people who changed their viewpoint, who stepped out from their present condition. Some people talk about this type of thing in a terminology which a lot of people have heard of. You say, coming out of your comfort zone. You see. And then some people say that success lies outside of your comfort zone. Yeah. So, people like this around the world, they help us, they inspire us to do these things, to see our life in a different way. Obviously, as Gunatitanand Swami mentioned or gave the example of the earth covered in thorns, you can't go around picking up every single thorn in this world. It's not possible. But it is possible to put on shoes yourself. Then wherever you go in the world, the thorns will not affect you. In a similar way, If a person changes their mindset, their attitude, their viewpoint, their perspective, whatever comes in their life, they will see it differently. The American president, Abraham Lincoln, it is said he failed 14 times in an election. But he didn't give up. Eventually he did become the president of America. But how did he see these 14 failures? He said, I consider failures as stepping stones to success. So he stepped out. He changed his mindset. Yeah. How many people we meet that, they didn't get the grades they wanted, GCSE or A-levels, and then they get depressed. Maybe start crying. Maybe they didn't get into the university they wanted. Maybe they didn't get into the degree course that they wanted. They've graduated and have been trying for a year and a half or 2 years to get a job and they're not getting any jobs. They've applied to 40, 50 companies and they're not getting a job. You can't remove the thorns from this world. They'll always be there. And they'll always keep coming your way. What we need to do is learn to wear the right shoes. That picture we saw earlier of the small frame. It looks good, it looks nice. But then when you change the frame size and you see the bigger picture, what a difference. Brings a smile to your face. And you just want to sit there and just keep looking at it. It gives you pleasure. Life can give us pleasure. But we have to see it in a different way. There's a very nice quote which I read once. No matter what yesterday was like, birds always start the new day with a song. It's worth thinking deeply about this. Most likely, wherever we are staying, we probably hear birds singing in the morning. Maybe on some trees around our house or something like that. And we've probably been hearing that for many years. But have we paid any attention to it? Thought about it? That no matter what yesterday was like, birds always start the new day with a song. It's a very nice quote. Yeah. And if we just have that type of understanding, is there any way that we could be miserable? Now, I'm not saying that, problems can be just brushed aside or put under the carpet. There are some things that require serious attention, yes. But we must remember that there is God for us. He is always there. We hear this famous story about the 4 footprints on the sand. And then after some time, there's only 2 footprints. And then the person says to God that, where was you in my time of need? And then God said, I was carrying you at that time. Those 2 footprints were not his, they were God's footprints. So every religion says these things, that God is there for us. And those who pray, they experience that. Yeah? Whether you pray to Bhagwan Swaminarayan or you pray to Sri Krishna Bhagwan or Ramchandra Bhagwan or Shankar Bhagwan, it doesn't matter. But God is there for us. He can help us. He can make us see life in a different way. Yeah? He can make us enjoy life, come what may. As we said, this person, Nicholas James Wojcik, he's very religious. He doesn't blame God. So why did God make me like this? What did I do wrong? He's happy He's happy that God has given him a chance to enjoy life, showed him the way, showed him how to see things differently. Same way in our life. Rather than getting bogged down in the issues, issues will come. But learn to see them differently. That no matter what issues come, we always see them in the right way. It's like the complex equation at the beginning. It looks very complex. But actually, if you know maths, you'll know how to look at it. And the first part says the answer is 1. The second part is plus, after the plus is 1, and after the equals, that says 2. All that equation is saying is 1 plus 1 equals 2. There's nothing complex about it. It's very simple. It's just how are we able to see it and understand it.